Hello, folks. This is Andrew Gilmore with another episode of Mostly Movies, Maybe Music. And my guest today is someone that, if you're from the Philadelphia area, you might have seen him. If you're interested in old movies, you've probably seen him around town. And his name is Jay Schwartz. And Jay is the founder of a film program called The Secret Cinema, which programs all kinds of obscure and interesting collections of films. And Jay has been a film collector for many years. He has a personal archive of thousands of films to choose from, and curates a lot of interesting shows around the Philadelphia area. And he's done shows in other places too, and we'll probably talk about that. But anyway, I've known Jay for about 10 years, and we met through an organization called the Chestnut Hill Film Group here in town about 10 years ago. And connected just because we both have an interest in obscure and interesting old films. So, and last year I actually got to help curate a secret cinema program with Jay, so that was an interesting experience. And we've exchanged emails once in a while and seen each other at various screenings, and I've been to several of his shows over the years. So, as I say, we've been connected for a little while, so he seemed like a natural choice for this show, and somebody that I should talk to and get some of his stories of adventures in film collecting. So I emailed him a few days ago, and he said yes right away. So here he is. So thank you, Jay. I appreciate your being on the show, and it's always good to talk to you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. So before we get into film, I have a lot of film stuff that we're going to talk about, but obviously we both have our record collections out, so I just wanted to start with music. And just basically, I know you're into a pretty wide range of music like I am, so what started that for you?
Oh, I mean, I do have all kinds of music in the collection. Uh, this is all old rock, I guess.
Yeah.
That other IKEA unit is rave punk music, and then there's another smaller IKEA unit with jazz and vocals, and somewhere in there is soundtracks and comedy. And but what got me into it? Well, I don't know, just listening to the radio, and the first records I bought were by the Monkees. They kind of were bigger in my life than the Beatles originally, though I did watch the Beatles cartoons that were on TV as well.
Uh-huh.
And just the phenomenon of the rock revolution, I guess,
Yeah.
to music, and bought a lot of records over my long lifetime. Um, is that an answer?
Yeah. Well, then what would you say was the progression from just kind of listening to music growing up into collecting?
Well, I I guess I didn't consider myself a collector for a long time, and I go back and forth over whether I think I am, even though I have a lot of records behind me. But I guess when I answered this question once before when I did an interview for the city paper about where they're just interviewing people, different people with record collections, and so I guess I became a collector when I bought my first used record, which didn't happen until I was in college, and someone on campus had a little box of records and they were cheap, and I bought one or two, and does that make me a collector? I don't know. What is a collector as opposed to a user or fan? I'm all those things. So
Yeah, that's a good distinction. I guess I'm.
even
Well,
if you have 20 records, you can still be a collector. I don't know.
well, that's true. Yeah, I started with about 20, and then I've got those shelves behind me, and I don't even have enough room for all my records on those shelves.
Are they all 78s?
Yeah, those are the 78s there, and my LPs are on the other side of the room.
Okay. I didn't know that about you till I started watching your podcast.
Oh, you watched some of them. That's good.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I got to see two so far.
Well, that's good. Well, I'd ask you which ones, but we're here to talk about you, so
Okay.
we can get into talking about my other shows later.
All right.
Um, but yeah, do you have any favorite albums that come to mind? Anything that was really influential to you?
I'm really bad with the 10 best lists, and people say that about films. Oh, you must have a favorite film or 10. And, there's hundreds. So it's really hard it's even more hard with records, I think.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah.
Well, I can skip that question then, but
I mean, I could say kinds of music. I tend to gravitate towards '60s rock music. It's what I grew up with and started listening to. But I still, if I look at either used records or reissue records, that's the first thing I look at. Uh, and then I was I was around at the start of the punk new wave movement, which is kind of a rebirth of rock and roll for a lot of people.
Right.
So I have a lot of those and fond memories of that whole world. And I have somewhat kept up with continuing uh, bands and trends in music, not as much as I used to, I will confess. I stayed with it a lot longer than most people of my generation. I would go to small clubs to see bands, which I always preferred to big concerts, which are far away and it's expensive. But
Yeah.
um, and I would see, and I'd be there with friends, and then they would kind of drop off, and I would still. It was like I got left behind in school because I kept seeing the cast in these audiences changing, and I
Yeah.
was still there. But I wasn't a regular since the '90s. Probably the last time I felt like on top of underground music, but I still hear some new bands from time to time that I like.
Yeah. What's something that you've heard recently that you like?
Um, it's not a new band, and they're not that young. But me and my wife Sylvia, we just went by accident to something I hadn't really. I'd heard the name, but I hadn't paid attention to. But I had some good friends that were big fans of something called. I have it right here. The the Len Price Three.
Hmm.
They can now post this on their website, which is a trio from, no one's named Leonard Price, but it's a trio from England. It's been around for about 20 years. They've made, I don't know, 4 or 5 albums. They just played at a record store in Hightstown, New Jersey, Randy Now's Man Cave. My two friends that were really into it had bought tickets. It sold out immediately because it's a fairly small space, the record store, and they both couldn't go at the last minute and gave us their tickets. And it was really fun and really good. And I described them to people as they kind of sound like the raw early Kinks singles with Beatle harmonies added.
Hmm.
So a lot of energy, a lot of melody, uh, really good band. So we bought that and a CD of a newer album. That one's
Yes.
20 years old, but there's a new pressing of it.
Yeah. It sounds good. I'll have to Google them later.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned being involved in the punk scene, and I'm sure you have a lot of stories there. So how did that start for you?
Um, the way I discovered it, some of the first records I got from that world, I actually heard on local FM radio. WMMR played the first television album and played the first Blondie album. And I didn't realize that they were part of a whole movement. Like, so these are good records, and I bought them. And we played them for about 2 weeks, as I recall, and they didn't catch fire. And Blondie didn't get big till the third album, and television never really got big. They're legendary now, but they were part of that CBGB scene
Right.
that is in New York. So I didn't. I told this story recently because I had this photo exhibition which we can talk about. But um, where was I? So in Northeast Philly where I grew up, there was a Sam Goody's record store in the Roosevelt Mall, which was the place I went to the most for records. And one day they had a magazine for sale called New York Rocker, and I saw it, and I looked at the names on the cover. This guy named Richard Hell was on the cover, and I forget who else. Mink DeVille maybe was mentioned. Things I never heard of, and I don't know if I was that curious about them or not, but it mentioned John Cale, who I
Right.
had was in the Velvet Underground and whose
Yes.
solo albums I had started to explore. They were kind of the first. Uh, John Cale and Eno were like the first records I bought that I wasn't really hearing on local rock radio in 1975, six, seven. Uh, so I thought, oh, I don't get to read about John Cale very often. There's an interview with him. I'll buy this. It's like $1 or $1.25. And eventually I read everything in that magazine and it seemed pretty interesting. And then not long after that, I took this trip to New York with my parents to buy a camera because at the time, New York camera stores, there was a whole district of them. And the one I was using, I was a photographer for my college newspaper, the Temple News, and my camera got stolen out of the office of the Temple News. And anyway, I had to replace it. So we went to New York, and then my parents dropped me off in Greenwich Village to just walk around and soak up the scene. And I went to some record stores there, and they had all these records I've been reading about in New York rock. So I bought a few of them and liked what I heard, and I became pretty impressed with this whole new world of music. It's kind of pretty deeply underground for the first couple of years, and not much after that, I looked at the Sunday Inquirer, and there was an ad for a new nightclub opening up that was going to have a band called the Dead Boys that I'd read about, and Richard Hell and the Voidoids were on the cover of that first issue I bought in New York Rockford. So I thought, oh, wow, this is exciting. I want to go to this. And at the time, I was still under drinking age, and it was a drinking club, and I didn't know if they'd let me in. But I think I kind of knew from working at the Temple News that if you were covering something for the newspaper, you'd get on the guest list. It would be free, and they wouldn't even question you about ID, which technically is legal, I believe, because you're allowed to work in the bar in Pennsylvania if you're under 21. You're not allowed to drink. So anyway, I forget exactly my excuse was for the Temple News or not, but I'd also called up the editor publisher of New York Rocker, Alan Betrock, who's a pretty legendary figure in record collecting and rock journalism. He's no longer alive. He died fairly young from cancer, sadly.
Hmm.
Called him up and said, "Do you want to? This club's opening up. Would you like a Philadelphia correspondent? And I can take pictures." And so, "Well, send me some pictures," and I did. And said, "Oh, these are good. Yeah, sure, right." And write a little story about the club opening. So I did that. I was there on the opening day, and I kept going. And by 1979, I had met the owner of the club the year before and talked him into hiring me as a publicist. I was still in college, and I did that. So I was there all the time, and we were able to hang. And and I took a lot of pictures. I actually took less pictures once I worked there because I didn't need that excuse to get on the guest list, and I got lazy about carrying my camera. I still did for certain shows, especially at New York Rocker, which had changed publishers at that point. Wanted pictures of one of the bands playing, but as I said, I had a photo show last year, about a year ago, um, where I gave up photography. I don't know why, but I stopped doing it at some point in the mid '80s. But I had all these negatives of new wave bands. New wave is a term that to some people it implies like a certain kind of modern rock, but to me it was like everything that came after the Ramones. It was new wave. That was the original usage of the term. It didn't mean
Right.
synthesizers. It didn't mean funny haircuts necessarily, but it included those two. Anyway, I had all these negatives of bands of like 100 different bands, and after many years of trying to mount an exhibition of them, as well as to show a 25-minute video documentary I made for a Temple student project, along with other video from the era. I finally made that all happen last year, and first visual aid is at this photo show at a place called the Space Art Gallery. All the photos are still on their website. You can scan the QR code. I don't know. They're still available for sale there. They were sold. They were displayed. I DJ'd at the opening reception, and a lot of people came, and they got some coverage, and finally got some use out of those pictures. And there might be a part two we talked about. I'm not sure. And then This summer, I'm going to be doing a. I realized I had enough pictures of the British band The Jam that I could do a whole show of just that. And in Spain, where my wife is from, in her city, Gijón, there's an annual mod music festival where they have all night DJ things and scooter rallies, and it's been going on for decades now. And they always have an art gallery component. And I was friendly with the guy that does it from my many trips to Gijón. We started through the films, which we can talk about. But I said, hey, would you like to make the art exhibition this year? All pictures of the Jam. They usually do stuff related to the past, but and that is now the past, the Jam. But they're beloved by the mod music loving community. So we said sure, and so I have to get those printed up now. I was lucky to meet a young photographer, Dale McCarthy, who, since I no longer have a dark room, who's been printing all these negatives and doing a wonderful job of it. So thanks, Dale. And I was in Spain in late July. Come look at my photos. We will do something with it here.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of information there. I've just been
Yes.
sitting here listening to you.
Yes. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, it makes it easier when I can
Yeah.
just sit and listen. But I have to think about my next question. But anyway, I guess we should get into some of the film stuff. When did you start collecting films?
Started collecting films on 8 millimeter using my parents' home movie projector when I discovered a company called Black Hawk Films. I should have worn my
Right.
Black Hawk Films T-shirt. Instead, I'm wearing my Craig Splicing Cement T-shirt.
Oh,
An early '50s ad for film splicing cement. Um, and Black Hawk Films, you probably know, but
yes.
they specialize, especially in silent films. Well, they had sound films of Wild and Hardy and others, but all the films of Charlie Chaplin and D.W. Griffith and Ron Hardy and Buster Keaton. They're all available somewhat affordably, but prior to the changes in the silver market in the '70s, which caused the price of film to go way up, and then when the silver prices stabilized, Kodak never lowered the prices again, which is why Kodak barely exists today. Perhaps, well, I guess it would have happened anyway with digital stuff, but I started to collect these films. I started to get interested in silent films in the year Charlie Chaplin won his special Oscar.
Hmm.
A local movie theater, I guess it was in re-release, was showing Modern Times, and my brother was going with a friend and invited me along, and I really loved Modern Times, and I went to the library, read all the books about silent films, read Greats Gone By, and whatever else there was, uh, and started and discovered Black Hook Films. First, they had this sampler reel for $2. You got this 15-minute reel with clips of all the kinds of films they had. And I just watched it over and over and was fascinated by it. And so this is like 1973, I guess. So this is still well before any home video format. And if you wanted to watch movies on your own schedule, of your own choosing at home, you had to buy film prints or borrow them or something. Uh, so I didn't get 16 millimeter films until a couple years later when I was about to start college and I was going to be a radio television film major at Temple University. Once again, the Philadelphia Inquirer, I saw in the classified ads this time an ad for a used 16 millimeter sound projector for like $100. And I thought, oh, I'll probably need this in my filmmaking studies, which I never went too far in my filmmaking studies. I was there for several years, but nonetheless, I bought a projector, and it came with some educational films, uh, one of which I still show to audiences from time to time about choosing the proper bra and girdle from some manufacturer called Warner Brothers, which they never quite explained at the beginning, but it's a different Warner Brothers that made undergarments, not the movie studio. But I love work using the projector and showing it to friends and family, and slowly acquired a very small collection of films. I remember I had to get a feature, a sound feature, and I bought from another company. It wasn't Black Hawk, a print. So at the time, it was mainly what from what I knew about. And I also subscribed to a magazine called Classic Film Collector, which was later renamed Classic Images, which published
Right.
until very recently. You know about that, I'm sure. Originally it was called 8 Millimeter Film Collector, and it was Classic Film Collector when I subscribed when I was in high school. I'd read about these film conventions that seemed like this fabulous thing that I'd never be able to go to myself. I think there were quite a few of them later. And anyway, what was advertised in that magazine and what Blackhawk sold was either films they had the rights to or films that were public domain. Uh, so I bought from another company the public domain Sound 1936 feature, My Man Godfrey,
Hmm.
because I liked the Thin Man movies, I like William Powell a lot, and it wasn't a very good print, but I learned later that that's how public domain prints tended to work
Right.
for dupes and multi-generational copies. But anyway, I watched that print a lot. I also borrowed films from Free Library. They had a circulating film library, which coincidentally is the subject of one of my next Secrets in the screenings at the Free Library Central Branch, doing a program called Films from FLP, Free Library Philadelphia, which is all based on the catalog I still have from the films I was able to borrow from them in the 70s and just a little bit 80s. It operated until the 90s, and they disposed of the collection, sent it to State College, Pennsylvania, where you can still borrow them back at regular rate for the shipping. I wasn't needing them at that point, but when I started to borrow films from the library, if you wanted a feature, and they had a small selection of sound features, they had Citizen Kane, and they had Mr. Ulo's Holiday, and they had documentary Kitticut Follies. If you wanted a feature, there was like a 1 year waiting list to get a feature because they
Wow.
were all booked up for the whole year. But I did that. I waited a year. But if you wanted the shorts, and they had all kinds of educational and documentary shorts, you could often get those in a week. So I borrowed a variety of stuff from them, and yeah, that's how I started collecting films. It evolved as time went on, and the biggest change was in 1992 when a friend of mine was appointed the booking agent for the indie rock nightclub, the Kaiser Pass Pub in Philadelphia, and had an upstairs room that wasn't being used. The stage was downstairs. He said, and on Monday nights they had like a poetry group that met there every 2 weeks. He said, why don't you use that room on the other Mondays that they're not there and show films? He knew I had a projector and some films. And right at that time, I went to a comic book store that sold a different magazine called The Big Reel, which had all kinds of films for sale. And I saw what they cost and thought, well, I charge a small admission fee that'll pay for the price of films and my film collection can grow. And that's what I did. And I never stopped.
Yeah.
Now, I hardly ever buy films because people keep giving it to me. Someone sent a box of them to me today, and it's just educational films I may never have a use for. Check them out and see if they're fun to watch.
Yeah, people have talked about that on my show before. That if people know you're a collector, then they'll give you stuff, and that's happened to me too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was going to ask you. Speaking of collecting, how do you find prints when you're doing a show? Because it sounds like your archive is kind of a mess.
It's not that much. Why does it sound that way?
Well, just from the descriptions I've read in articles, it sounds like it's really big, and it sounded like my image of it in my head was that it might be difficult to find things. But I guess I'm sure you have a way of
Well,
organizing them.
yeah, it is cluttered and messy, and there's a lot of unfinished tasks to do there. It's not in my home. It's in a space I rent in an old industrial building,
Oh, I stand corrected then.
and So there are films in the basement here that people gave me that I never got around to taking to the workshop. I call it my film workshop. I watch films there. I fix them there. Um, it's somewhat organized. Originally, the organization for many years was um, I would to maximize. So I have all these industrial steel shelves, and to maximize the capacity of the shelves, it makes sense to put reels of the same size together.
Yeah.
So a reel that's this big is like 20 minutes long, and this big is 30 minutes, and a feature will be on a couple of reels this big. I don't know if you would tell how far my hands are apart, but anyway. So I would stack them up with the same size reels, and then when I watch films, I take handwritten notes about the content and the condition of the prints, and I have them all in a file cabinet, and I have lists of the titles, and it's somewhat primitive, my method of organizing things for both storage and programming. But I have an idea. I'm going to do a program of films about exotic music films. I haven't done that for a while. There was an exotic music revival trend in the 90s, and I did. This is the second one I did. Uh, Marie Montez there. So at this point, it was exotic films, music, and more, where I could show Marie Montez trailers as well as films of the Three Sons and Corla Pandit. But I go through my lists and make a note of all the titles that might be good, and then I find the films that maybe I watch a few to refresh my memory of what they're like. And then I usually could find them. I could remember based on they're in the stack of 800-foot reels.
Right.
Uh, but what I found was that if I made a short film program of 10 films, I would go to my workshop. I'd find 8 of them really quickly, and I spent hours searching for the last 2 because they weren't where I expected them to be. And I'd already written a press release that said I'm going to show this film, and I have to find it. Sometimes I didn't, but usually I did. But I wasted a lot of time. So during the pandemic shutdown, I finally numbered all the shelves, took inventory of the shelves, and I have it's just a simple Word document that tells me what shelf every title is on. So now
Right.
it's pretty well organized. There's some that aren't yet in the list. It's always growing. It's always growing and always ungrowing because films decay and become unusable.
Right.
Um, but anyway, it's fairly organized. It looks like a mess, but it's not really.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. So on the timeline, I guess we have you in '92 when you started Secret Cinema. So how did you start gaining a following? How did you get your name out there?
Well, what I was doing was novel enough at the time that newspapers, especially, liked to write about it. This was back when we had a lot of newspapers. Uh, that's my biggest problem now is reaching new audience, and not just me. Any presenter of arts of any kind has this problem now. The internet is really unpredictable as to who you're going to reach on the internet through whatever method of social media.
Yeah.
And I really missed the weekly paper. The city paper was my best friend. Stephen Ray, the Inquirer, wrote for my very first show about me, and whenever I did something interesting, he highlighted it in his weekly column. Well, they don't have a weekly column. There also would just be listings in addition to like editors' picks of what to do this weekend and feature stories. I had several feature stories that I Secret Cinema. There would just be listings of all the repertory film screenings, all the music concerts. No one has room for listings. The few newspapers that still exist um, have many fewer pages, so they don't have the coverage, and they have many fewer readers, sadly. And I realize that this has bigger consequences than not knowing what to do in a weekend, like the loss of democracy. But it's also really tough on self-funded uh, things like Secret Cinema. So that's how I started to. I started by the third screening. I got this really nice thing in the Philadelphia City paper, which no longer exists. And the next show was sold out, which at that space, the capacity was like 68 or something. It was just a room where with folding chairs and some sofas, and I had to move all the. Among the many things I had to do to see the cinema in the early days was, I had to find films, watch films, describe films, find art to for films before the internet. Uh, I also had to maintain equipment. I also had to go to these places and be a furniture mover. I had to move chairs from the basement to the second floor and push these sofas around to make it something like a screen.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, that really helped that first city paper article. And, thank you, Margaret Detweiler. And there was pretty consistent coverage through the near death of print media.
Yeah.
Still is occasionally, but it's not like it used to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you still have some shows coming up this year, so I guess people are still showing up, so that's good.
They are, but as I say, it's harder than ever to reach new people. And while I have a decent sized email list, at some point I started making an email mailing list. For a while, I did. I've actually mailed postcards, but I haven't done that for a while. I should do that again. I used to do a lot of flyering. I have some of my old flyers here. I gave up on that because it took too much time, and it would take more time now. Um, and I used to ride a bicycle around Center City, Philadelphia, and find coffee houses and record stores that were friendly to people putting up community events on the wall. There's most of those hipster places got pushed by rising rents to outlying neighborhoods like Fishtown and West Philly and South Philly. So it would take me like a week to distribute them as I made flyers now,
Right.
and there's fewer places that are friendly to that, sadly. And as a result, when you do put something on their bulletin board, it gets covered a day later by another
Right.
event. So I just gave up on doing that. I just promote on Facebook and Instagram. If I'm lucky, some new people see it. But I send email for every show to a few thousand people on my list. But they drop off after a while. People move away. People lose interest. You always have to replenish audiences. Every presenter of anything learns that, and it's hard to reach new people. It's easy to reach people that already know about it, but
Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
find that the internet works well for. Although some people know how to make things go viral, I don't.
yeah. I'm doing a film series at Chestnut Hill Library now, and I'm not getting a lot of publicity on that either. So I hear you.
But you mean the Chestnut Hill Film Group that we're both part of, or something
No,
else?
no. I mean, I have my own series at the Chestnut Hill Library.
Oh, the library.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Where the film group used to present.
Yeah. And that's well, I guess the last one got a decent audience, but I'm doing 5 shows, and the first two didn't get that many, but the third show got more than the first two, so I guess it's growing a
In
little bit.
that room in the back,
Yeah.
which became at some point there was a lot of red tape, which is why the film group moved to Woodmere.
Oh,
Because
yeah, I didn't know that.
well, maybe they lowered the restrictions, but they wanted money for security guards. It used to be the librarian there would watch the place for free, but then she retired, and it became hard to do stuff there.
Yeah. But I'm just saying I can relate to the lack of audience, but I'm just glad that you're still out there because I've enjoyed the shows of yours that I've seen, and I hope there'll be more that I can come to in the future.
Well, thank you. Well, I keep doing it. At this point, I don't really make money from it because I have substantial expenses in just keeping the films I have.
Yeah.
Rent and electricity for air conditioning in the summer, and I have to keep replacing the air conditioners because they don't make them like they used to. But I kind of do it just because I have the films and I want to share them.
Yeah, you have to do something to get them out there for sure.
I'm going to
Uh,
have them. I've got to show them.
yeah. So I guess that brings up another point, which is I know you're into presenting really unusual stuff, so you like things that are offbeat. So How did you find kind of some of the weirder things that are out there? Was it just kind of finding things randomly, or what?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you collect films, you learn about different categories of film that you might not learn about on television or in a movie theater. Miscellaneous categories of film, which I mean, it's a lot easier to learn about stuff now with the internet. But uh, some of the first films I found before, long before Secret Cinema, there was this wonderful store in the Manioc neighborhood that sold movie posters and stills, and lobby cards, and just talking about someone that used to live around there. We missed that because all the posters were $2 and all the lobby cards and stills for 50 cents. We also had books, and at some point I talked to the owner about, oh yeah, I collect films. Oh, you collect films? Come to my apartment upstairs. And he had these reels that he sold me for $15 each, and a lot of what was on them were sounds, and I had no idea what that meant, but they were, as you no doubt know, films that were made, film depictions of songs, either a band on a bandstand or a dramatic interpretation of the song lyrics acted out by the performers. And these films were made in the 1940s for a film jukebox device. They were not shown in theaters. There
Right.
was no television. They were only shown on the film jukebox. They made 2,000 different films. Um, and these films survive and are seen on television, video compilations. But I just found this fascinating. In fact, the first time I showed films in public, about 10 years before Secret Cinema, I was managing a band, and they were playing at this club I also worked at, not the Hot Club, which was my first club, but the Philly Saloon. I said, oh, let's have as an opening act, we'll have a reel of these soundies that I spliced together, the best ones that I had. But sadly, that reel mostly turned to vinegar,
Mm.
mostly decayed. But it was a fun reel, and I said, we'll call this, to promote the band, we'll call it Pre-Rock Videos from the archive of the band. It really was mine. Um, and well, I was just fascinated by soundies for a long time. Then I learned that the idea was revived to have a big machine that could play films on demand by putting coins in it by a French company called Scoperton in the 1960s.
Right.
And eventually, in the Film Collectors magazine, someone had a whole jukebox distributor's surplus of Scopertone films for sale, and I called the guy up right away, which you had to do in those days because people would advertise films that there was only one print of usually that they were selling. If you weren't the first caller for something that was either priced cheap or was rare, then you didn't get it. And then people would subscribe to the magazine with over the man, which I couldn't afford. Anyway, this guy had a lot of copies, and I said, I want to get one copy of every title you had. It was about 75 different Stoker titles. And he gave me like a bulk price, and I was able to do that. And I made a program of those, and then did, I wanted to learn about them, and the guy who sold them to me told me, oh, well, there's this guy that wrote like a fanzine about Scopertones for people that had the machines that had to fix them, but he wrote about other stuff. It's called the Scopertone newsletter. So, oh wow, where can I find that? I don't know. And then I had this book called The Whole Pop Catalog that was published in the 90s about different pop culture things that you could buy and enjoy. And there was a chapter on jukeboxes, and it didn't mention anything about Scopertones, but it had someone had a newsletter for regular jukeboxes, and it had the phone number. I called the bank and said, "Do you know about the Scopertone newsletter?" He said, "Oh yeah, Fred Bingaman. Here's his phone number." And I called the guy up, and he'd stopped publishing it by then, but he told me all the back issues. So I learned a little about the history of Scopertone. Since then, there's a lot more information online. There was a book that was published in Italy about Scopertone and other jukeboxes in the 60s. And he even loaned me some old advertising materials in it, which I took pictures of to actual show real photographic slides. And I had this whole illustrated lecture on the history of the film jukebox from Sandy's to Scopertone that I presented at one of my Secret Cinema screenings. So,
Yeah. So let's see. Something else I wanted to mention is I was thinking about this before we went on. Just that you and I kind of live in this world where we know a lot about old movies, but I'm thinking maybe a lot of the people that come to your shows are not as informed as we are. So, what kind of feedback do you get from people at your shows who might not be familiar with old movies?
Well, if they show up, something about the description of the program seemed intriguing. I show less feature films than I used to. When I started, it was all feature films, but I always included some oddball shorts before the feature film. I find that nowadays it's hard to get an audience for the feature films that I would like to show. And I don't think it's because of the choice of the feature. I think it's just people think, well, I can see that at home. I can stream that. I can see
Right.
it somewhere else. Whereas when I do a program of musical shorts or cartoons, perhaps, uh, people appreciate more that I put together something that was a little harder to see. Even though you can now see on YouTube, you can see scope tones and you can see soundies and you can see almost every cartoon and you can see almost every trailer and you can see almost every TV commercial, which I've done programs of those. But all these miscellaneous categories of films started to interest me, and originally I discovered them through just finding reels of film and what was on them. And that for me was one of the great things about film criticism. Stagnant. It's early pornography from the 20s, 30s, and 40s was one of my more popular programs, which I did a few times. Like films, you find all these things eventually.
Yeah.
But anyway, you asked about the reaction. Well, if they come, they probably are going to like it. That said, sometimes not. Sometimes, at some point, I decided especially when I was getting larger audiences at my peak years, which is the peak years of the city tape and things like that. Um, there'd always be a couple of walkouts, and I
Hmm.
kind of told myself, well, that just means I'm doing my job right. And it's not for everyone. Uh, I'm not trying to compete with superhero movies or whatever's popular now. I'm trying to explore um, hidden corners of the past that I find really interesting, and most of my audience does as well. They're
Right.
coming for any length of time, they know what to expect.
Yeah. And I forgot what my next question was. Look at my notes. Oh, just that when I was reading articles that about you and looking at other interviews that you've done, um, it's mentioned some of the venues that you've played in, and I know that you generally don't do shows in theaters very often. I know you've done some of that, but you play in kind of out of the way places. Do you think there's an advantage to that? Is that more interesting than being in a theater?
Um, well, I initially liked the challenge of turning some space into a temporary movie theater, and I try to have as big of a picture as I can fit in there with my equipment. And most of what I do is 16 millimeter, but I do collect 35 millimeter films as well, not nearly as many as the 16. Uh, and try to be as professional as possible. But that said, I also always also try to make the admission costs a little cheaper than a multiplex because it's not going to be quite the same standard of professionalism. Uh, but people don't mind that. Anyway, um, I don't. I'm happy to do it in theaters, and I have done several shows in theaters. The Bryn Mawr Film
Yes.
Institute has been very consistent in supporting what I do, and I've got to show in some of the other theaters. I used to show in the Philadelphia Film Festival when it was managed by other people. They have not reached out to me, and the few times I tried to reach out to them, they weren't that receptive. But uh, although some of the things I did in the festival in the past were very successful. I used to show stuff at the International House a lot, and I now do it at the Lighthouse Film Center, which is the continuation of that program at the Bach Building in South Philadelphia. Um, I'm open to show them anywhere, and I tell people it has to have electricity, it has to be capable of being dark, and hopefully has seating for at least 50 people. But other than that, I can show them anywhere.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
some of the theaters I wish I could be, some of the specialty theaters I'd like to do more stuff in, but they tend to book really far in advance, and then well, talk to us next year, and then next year comes, well, talk to us next year. And I'm not always in the forefront of their mind, it seems, uh, but I'm grateful for when they do welcome.
yeah. Well, I guess that covers most of what I wanted to ask you, but I know you have a show coming up next week at the Woodmere, and that's for people in town. I should mention Jay is showing The Hitchhiker, Ida Lupino's film, at the Woodmere Art Museum. That's next Tuesday, which is the 31st, March 31st, at 7 p.m. And what else do you have coming up that you want to promote?
Um, Let me remember. I have. I'm going to look at my phone now to get the dates correct. But I mentioned that show at the Free Library, um, which is all so on a website, which is thesecretcinema.com,
Right.
where I try to list everything. And
I
as I
saw.
say, it's all films that the Free Library in this catalog, they're all films in that catalog, but even though they don't have them anymore, I do. It's not their prints. I've turns out I just had this idea. I was offered to do a screening at the Free Library. I've done a couple before, but not for a while. And someone new there that wanted to bring in Secret Cinema, and I was trying to think. It was kind of up to me as to what I wanted to show, and I went. Whereas the previous time it was tied to a gallery exhibition they had about urban renewal. So I thought, what can I do? Free library, and I thought, oh, I have this old free library catalog from 1976. Let me look through it and see how many films I now have collected in my own collection. I had about 53 or 56 of the titles I now have in my collection from other sources because a lot of large film libraries tended to collect the same titles. Uh, so it's an assortment of short films that they used to lend to people, and now I can provide.
I like that. That's an interesting concept.
Yes, I mean, again, it was popular among big library systems in the days before home video. Some of them used to loan 8 millimeter prints. I have a whole collection full of standard 8 millimeter prints. I was in the 40s of silent films from the 20s that used to be in some library system that were in some private collector's hands and eventually ended up in it. And I have a lot of 8 millimeter silent and sound films that I don't do anything with the Secret Cinema, but I wouldn't mind. I had this idea of doing like a mini Secret Cinema. It would just be like in a coffee place that could serve like lunch on a Sunday afternoon, and I would show silent films. But I haven't yet located the right space for that. It has to get dark. Doesn't have to have 50 seats for this one, and I would do it for like a free lunch.
Yeah.
So I want to sponsor that just for the fun of watching this with other people instead of watching it alone, which is usually how I watch films.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which silent films would you be showing?
oh, there's many to choose from. A lot of comedies, features, there's everything. There's serials, and there's even not a lot of Black Hawk Sound films as well. So I mean, I could do it forever. I haven't. I've been given two large collections, or maybe three. I forget of 8 Super 8 films that I usually don't have use for.
Yeah.
So I've watched several by myself, but it'd be fun to watch it with other people. Uh,
Yeah, that's the thing I like about going to your shows is the just being with an audience and seeing those things with an audience, the community feeling of it.
yes, especially comedy films should be seen with other people. Now, if I ever do that miniseries, I don't. It'll probably be the way I watched silent films when I was in college and when I had my what I call the catalog and 8 millimeter projector, which means with no live music, which is
Right.
not what I normally do with my other screenings. But I don't think it. I don't know how I would tackle that. You know, as you know, when I've shown silent films in my regular series, I always have live music, and it's always been from Don Tremere.
Right.
He was great and has been doing it since 1969, I think. He's still doing it, and I just contacted him, and we just plan to do a show in September, which the title is not picked yet, but we're going to be at the Glen Ford Museum in September. Uh,
Well, I hope I can see that. I've met Don a couple of times. He's a great guy.
yes, he is. Here's some past screens of Don. This was a long time ago. Whoops, the old Army game, W.C. Fields.
Yep.
You think of him as a sound comedian, but he made several silent films, as you probably know.
Yes, he did.
Uh, I showed a lot more obscure stuff than that. I showed this one. Maybe I'll do this again. This will have the print. The Tongue Man,
Wow.
Ayakawa. Some interesting racial ideas and
Where did you find a print of that?
the collector's market and the big real magazine offered for sale 30 years ago, I guess.
And I saw also that you're doing a comedy shorts program. I think it's at Bryn Mawr in August, is it?
Yes, I am.
And that's, well,
Haven't.
you know I love comedy shorts, so do you have any ideas for that yet?
Yeah, well, I think you've been to some of the shows I did on my own at the Moss Building.
No, I've
Um,
never been to, or I might have been
oh,
there once. I can't remember.
well, I forget, but um, I did a couple editions of a program I called Two Reelers, which was just to kind of tell people who aren't like you and me that besides the Three Stooges and Our Gang and On Hardy, there were all these other series of comedy shorts.
Yes.
So I had films of Edgar Kennedy and Leon Earl, and it was decently attended. I've been asked to include some bigger names in this program, so I may succumb to that, even though I always try to show films that people wouldn't see without me. Uh,
Right. I mean, I do the same thing in my classes. I've been teaching for Mount Learning Tree for 17 years, and I always tell people they're not going to see Casablanca in my class. I go for the obscure stuff.
yes,
So
I
we're
mean, I
we're
guess I understand why the art houses always show Casablanca because it always brings people in.
yeah.
But that's not my job. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, as you know. So
right.
we're very like-minded in that and
And if you
wanting
like
to get the other
Casablanca,
stuff out
you'll
there.
probably like the rest of it. But
Yeah.
uh, now here's the most obscure silent film I ever showed, which I haven't used in a long time. Uh, that you've even never heard of, The Blasphemer.
No, I don't know that one.
Although I used to work at Movies Unlimited video store, a mail order company. I was in the catalog department, and they did have a tape of this. So when I saw it for sale, I was able to watch first, I guess. This was a silent melodrama from 1921 made by something called the Religious Films Organization,
Huh.
which was a Christian film producer, but it's that sounds like maybe it wouldn't be a lot of fun, but it's actually like a pretty seamy melodrama
Hmm.
uh, with a lot of fun parts. Uh, I should show that again.
Yeah, that sounds intriguing.
Yes, but and once again, Don Kinnear played for that a long time ago.
Yeah.
Uh, but anyway, what was I talking about? I forgot.
I was just asking about your upcoming shows and that
Oh
stuff.
yes.
Yeah.
So free library show. The next Grimoire show is not the comedy shorts; it's Philadelphia films, and
Oh,
that's
right.
that's actually the one. They say I have a lot of films. I really don't need to get any more. I rarely buy films at this point, but that said, the one thing I'd be willing to buy is I'm always searching for films about Philadelphia.
Right.
What I mean by that is I lost track of how many editions of this program I've done, but I'll find a flyer for that. This is the second time I did it. I was at York College of Art Auditorium from Philadelphia with Love. It's named after a film I have, which is kind of this funny tourism film with this song at the end with uh, vocalist Sergio Franchi. singing a song called "From Philadelphia with Love," but it's standing on Ben Franklin Parkway singing the song. Anyway, I collect any film that has to do with Philadelphia. Uh,
Sure.
Industrial films that were made, educational films, uh, television programs. So that's the one thing I made it a mission to collect. I know of only one other organization that does that, which is the Temple Library. But I'm looking for them all the time. I haven't found any for a while. But anyway, I found a couple. That's not true. I found a couple really good ones recently, but not enough to make a whole program. So the Bryn Mawr program, which is on uh, April 9th. Thursday, April 9th at Bryn Mawr Film Institute, I'm going to do a program of Philadelphia films that I have shown years before in Philadelphia, but never brought to Bryn Mawr. I've done the Philadelphia theme a few times in Bryn Mawr, but this will be their first screening of these films, which include, what's not on this list. I forget what it includes, but a lot of stuff you won't see elsewhere. Uh, it's hopefully entertaining and interesting and fun.
Yeah.
Uh, Other than that, in May, I'll be back at the Rotunda. The Rotunda is a former Christian Science church acquired by the University of Pennsylvania. They use for all kinds of arts programming. They very kindly sponsor Secret Cinema screenings several times a year, so therefore it's free admission, which is also true of the library screening, which is also true of the Woodmere screening, though they appreciate donations. So I haven't planned that one yet, but I'll have some program at the Rotunda several times this year.
Uh-huh.
That's one being in May, and in the Comedy Shorts at the end in August, and not sure what else. A silent film with Glenn Ford, and so on. I tend to do things. I tend to plan last minute compared to most film programmers, just because I'm a procrastinator, I guess. I don't know. But I've got lots of stuff to show. To be showing.
Yeah. Well, I guess that covers about everything, so we can wrap it up here, I think. But thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And,
And I'll be
well,
I'll be playing some of these records at the Trestle Inn
oh, good.
on Thursday, April 16th. A
Okay, that's
mixture
good to
of
know.
old records.
Yeah, you want to make sure you get all your plugs in there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you. I'll see you, well, I'll be at the Chestnut Hill Film Group meeting in April, so I'll see you then.
If people are interested in the Secret Cinema locally, they might want to join the email list. Go to thesecretcinema.com. There's a link at the bottom to sign up for the email list. It's kind of the only consistent way to stay on top of what we're doing.
Right.
We'll get two messages about every program we do. And one other thing, I mostly show in Philadelphia, but I have done in other cities and other countries. And I'm going to be the first one out of town for a while, coming up pretty soon, April 11th in Jersey City at the headquarters of the radio station WFMU, which I heard you talking about on another
Yes.
episode. And I used to listen to that guy's show, actually.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Oh, great.
And I've seen him set up at their record show as well.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah. Um, so I offered to do a program there for free as a fundraiser for the station. And I'm going to be doing a show which I've done several times in Philadelphia over many years, which I called Nuggets, Celluloid Artifacts of 60s Rock. The name, and some record fans will realize it is derived from a compilation album put together by musician and writer Lenny Kaye. It was kind of the first compilation to assemble what's come to be known as garage rock of the 60s. And it's basically whatever scraps of 60s rock I have in my collection fit into one program. I wish I had more, but it's very expensive and you have to like it. So I have some rare stuff. And as with the last couple of times I showed this in Philly, Lenny Kaye himself will be there kind of doing like a commentary track between reels.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, that sounds cool.
and they have a WFMU has their own venue in their station headquarters building in Jersey City, like a little nightclub. So that's what I'm going to show. The film's on April 11th.
Yeah. Well, I guess I should apologize. I was trying to wrap it up before you got all your plugs in there, but
And I forgot all my plugs.
yeah. Well, that's okay. I guess now you've promoted everything, so
Yes.
that's been about an hour. So I'll let you go and get on with your day. But thank you for your time, and as I say, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Jay. I appreciate it.
Uh, Thank you. You're very welcome. And that's it.
Take care.
All right.